they have gone 18 years of their life not even kissing anyone because they're trying to stay so pure for their husband. It's got to be very awkward.
Well, and that's something you hear even in the mainstream LDS church as well, that, you know, in order to get married in the temple, you have to be sexually pure and there is no sex before marriage. And I would hear a lot of girls talk about how hard that was, or how they would consummate the marriage on the honeymoon night or on their honeymoon, and they would feel like immense guilt and shame, and how it would take a long time for them to be able to feel comfortable or to work through that feeling of impurity, and that it didn't magically just change and for them to feel like it was okay now that they were married, you know? And so there's a lot like emotionally that goes into a lifetime of purity culture into now it's just supposed to be okay. Not only is it supposed to be okay, but it's necessary in order for me to have children. So now you go from purity culture, nothing at all. Now it's okay, but not only is it okay and I need to like ease into it, but I really want children, so that means it has to happen.
Now it's required.
And so now there's like the pressure of it as well.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 34 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church. It is a polygamous community run by Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a lifetime sentence in prison.
I was raised in Utah as a member of the mainstream LDS Church. Sam and I have been married for 10 years now.
Crazy. Congrats.
And you too, babe. We just had our anniversary,
crazy.
and we have 2 beautiful kids.
Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank all of our donors, YouTube members, and patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support.
Yes, today we are with the final episode that we are reviewing of Polygamy USA. This is episode number 6, and it kind of is a fitting theme, I feel like, for our anniversary week, and that is love.
All about marriage.
All about
Yes.
love and marriage. Basically, now in Polygamy USA, we have 3 couples. We have one that just barely got married through placement marriage, so they don't really know each other. They're starting to move in together. We'll get into that. We have another couple who they wanted to choose that they were going to marry each other. Young, immature teenagers
19.
who think they're ready to get married when it's very clear to them and the brethren that they are not.
Right. We all thought we knew everything at age 18. And
Yes.
I think I was actually mentioning this, that watching this couple that feel like they are ready to get married and they know everything.
They're just kids.
Yes, like you're just kids, and it's almost frustrating, like, oh my gosh, come on, just live a little bit before you make a decision like that. But then thinking back on our lives at age 18, geez, I was ready to take on the world. I felt like I knew everything at that point. So I don't know. Everybody has to grow past that phase, I guess.
Yes. And then the last person is Rosemary, who is right now in the process of, she is placing herself for marriage. Not placing, what's the word?
She is turning herself into the brethren, as she says. Yes.
Yes. So she wasn't receiving revelation of who she should marry. And so she's decided to turn herself in and let the revelation come from the brethren. So we have these 3. I mean, the other families are still there. We'll talk a little bit about them. But mainly it's these 3 like different pieces of marriage, right? Like someone who's about to get married, someone who's a newlywed, someone who is hoping to be placed for a marriage. So there's a lot going on with marriage.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, and we'll get into our different comments, but just to see the differences and how they all are under the assumption or impression that everything that they do is done because that's what God is directing and is guiding the brethren or the leaders of the church to make sure that everything is done exactly according to God's plan. And just some of the stuff that they are talking about, like the Colley family, he already has 18 kids and 3 wives. And in his mind, in order to be obedient and follow God's plan, he needs to have way more children. He needs to have more wives, more children. And so it's this never-ending, I'm not quite good enough, got to be better, I got to do more, I got to have more children, more wives. And it was just interesting to see how they put all of their attention on that specific thing, which, hey, I love the idea of putting all the attention on family. I do believe that family is the most important thing. I love that. But seeing it through their eyes is very unique
Well,
and almost concerning based on some of the stuff that they end up doing because they feel that that is what they have to do.
Well, it's a lot of pressure too for their family, right? So this is the same family that just barely in like the last 2 episodes, one of his other wives had to go and get a job. They're struggling financially. Now they're talking about getting storage containers to create bedrooms
Yep.
separate from the house, so they can be able to have enough room for all these children and how they want to continue to have more. And I thought it was interesting. He opened up to his family this picture that he had drawn when he was 18 of what he envisioned the future to be like, and it was 7 wives and 50 children. And I was like, that is a lofty goal. At 18, before you left, how many wives did you think you would end up with?
Oh my goodness.
Did you think about it?
I honestly never really thought too much about how many wives. I did
Okay.
assume that eventually I would be a polygamist, practicing polygamist, and have multiple wives and children, because that as well, I was taught that that was the most important thing. So I did expect to have that, but because it was all completely up to the prophet or the leaders of the church on whether or not I was even worthy enough to have any wives or have any children, I didn't really feel that I could create a plan for myself.
That makes sense.
And that's one of the reasons I ended up leaving, is I felt like I could never decide for myself what was going to happen. It was all about waiting and hoping that God would find you worthy and speak to the prophet. So feeling trapped in that way was one of the reasons that I didn't feel comfortable continuing on that way.
Yeah, and it was actually the collie's oldest daughter, who is now 18, or was she 19? 18, I think, still. And she was the one who went and turned herself in to the brethren. And turning herself in was her way of saying, you know, I've been praying for a couple years and I haven't received a name of who I should marry. And so I am going to let the brethren pray about it and see if they come up with a name. But she had an interesting predicament that she mentioned that kind of, I think, put into perspective that while the women of Centennial Park feel like they have choice, there still is a certain element of believing that like the brethren or the priesthood can always kind of out-trump your own decisions, because you have to have faith that they're men of God.
Right.
And I say all that leading into, she came to her mother at one point and said, now that I've turned myself in to the brethren, what if they give me a name and I don't feel good about it?
Well, and that was interesting, because the mother's response, well, she started off by saying, well, if you don't feel good about it, then you shouldn't do anything. You shouldn't follow that. And then she said, but my father told me that even if I don't feel good about something, I need to trust in the brethren that they are men of God, and what they are asking me to do is revelation directly from God. And then her mother said, yes, you need to do what the brethren say. You need to decide if you're going to put your faith in them, and if you are, then yes, when they come with a name, then you need to follow that. So the mother kind of switched her tone, it seems like, in, well, if your father said that, then I agree.
Well, not only that, but maybe she hadn't thought of that aspect too, where all of a sudden she's like, well, I guess that's true. If you have faith, and then the mom switched it to faith as well. As soon as she heard what her husband had said, okay, oh, that does make sense. If you have faith that these brethren are speaking to God and you're asking them for a name from God, and God gives you a name, who are you to say no to it?
Right.
And so again, it just kind of, like, in my mind, Rosemary's going to feel like it was her choice. And she could even tell people in the outside world, no, I chose to practice polygamy. I chose to turn myself in. So therefore, like, I was trusting in God, and it was all my choice. Like, all of those different things. As a young girl, she's going to feel like this is all her choice.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, if she can't say no to the brethren because that's saying no to God, then is it really choice? Or is she, like,
Right.
being handed?
Yeah, and this is a tricky
things.
discussion here, because choice is relevant to one's surroundings and their environment. I mean, you could say that about anyone in their life. That did you actually make the choice, or did your environment make the choice for you?
That's true.
And so it's not just polygamy, it's any community, any culture that you live in will help guide your decision and choice making. Now, of course, that being said, polygamy is a very unique and very strict rule that is not the norm, not in any way, shape, or form. It's very, very different. So, and especially for women where they are going to be married to the same man, multiple women in the same home, that's where you have to wonder, yeah, I mean, they are saying that they're making the choice and that they are okay with this decision of living in polygamy, but they also talk about how hard it is, the difficulties that come along with that, and how they're jealous and how this and that, all these other things happen, but yet they're doing it because they want to prove themselves to God. So that's where you have to wonder, okay, if your whole life is this hardship, this difficult thing to live, that's where you should ask yourself, okay, is this the environment that I should be depending on for my decisions?
Yeah, and it's a tough one, but I thought it was a very interesting conversation that she had with her mom in seeing how her realizing after she had done it, oh, now I'm kind of giving up my choice,
right,
by choosing to turn herself in. The other one that I thought was interesting in a whole different opposite way is Ezra and Tiffany, because he has a girlfriend that's outside of the community.
Yep.
They're young, dumb, and in love. And
all been there.
yeah. And, they're only 18 and 19, I think, anyway. Or she might still be 17.
I don't remember.
Super young. Anyway.
Teenagers.
But I found it interesting that Ezra wanted to, he's going against the church to have a girlfriend, to not let the Lord decide who he was going to marry, or to have a girl have revelation of who she was supposed to marry. But he's still very determined to break those rules and stay within the community. He still wants his marriage to be within the community. It still seems like he wants plural marriage eventually. For Tiffany's sake, I hope she really thinks that all the way through. I don't know if they end up getting married or not, but it's one of those where it seems like he doesn't want the rules, but he does want the lifestyle.
Right.
Did you see that in the FLDS?
So, wait, which part?
Oh, sorry.
No. Okay, well, get back to that because I am curious what you meant.
Okay.
But for Ezra, I was wondering if part of what he is, his actions, and hey, I want to stick with this community, but I want to marry this girl outside of the community. I have to wonder if some of that's because of the show, and they're filming him, so they want him to still try to work it out with his parents. Because the way I saw it in the FLDS, if we wanted a different lifestyle, we didn't stick around and try to
make it mesh,
force them to accept us.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was partly because of the show. Instead, if the show had not been a factor at all, I am very convinced, I can't say for sure, but I'm guessing here, based on what I've seen, that he would have most likely left the community in order to be with the person that he loved. And then that would have been that. I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't have had any relationship with his parents, but I don't think he would have continued on in the community like he did in the show.
In trying to have both, right? Like kind of have his cake and eat it too.
Exactly.
I also think it was interesting that...
Sorry, is that what you were going to ask?
That was what I was going to ask in the FLDS. But I also thought it was interesting that Tiffany's kind of like, she's kind of going along with it, like, okay, I don't think I'd want to share you, but like if this is really important to you. But then when he talked about moving, she was like, that's going to be hard for our trust issues. And we're all like, if you have trust issues at 18, like, don't get married, don't do it.
And moving, not with her. What he meant by moving was he was going to move to North or South Dakota to work with his brother, and she was going to continue living in St. George, Utah. So there was going to be this separation between them while he went to try to make this $10,000, and she clearly did not trust him in moving and being on his own, which, yikes.
This is a bad sign. The $10,000 was very interesting because when he went to the brethren and said, I want to marry Tiffany, they're like, you need to have $10,000. You need to have a place to live first. You need to be prepared for marriage, which is great. It's great to be prepared for marriage financially, a little more security, especially at such a young age. However, for our last couple that just barely got married, Hiram and Kelly, they didn't have that. He had been on a service mission for like 3.5 years before he got married. He didn't have savings because he wasn't working for money. They didn't have a house. They're moving in with his brother's family, and the church was all about that. So I kind of wonder if it's just extra hoops of like, by the time you go and earn $10,000, hopefully you'll get over this idea of marrying this girl who's not within the community.
It
That's what
definitely,
it seems like.
yeah, it definitely seemed that the brethren were saying, "Hey, if you follow our rules and do what we ask you to do, then we will help you out. We'll find a place for you to live. We'll make sure you get the money. We will hold you up until you can walk. And but if you don't follow our rules, then good luck. Go figure out your life." And I don't know if his brother, they didn't say, so I'm starting to doubt that his brother is still a part of the community, the one that's working in one of the Dakotas.
Yeah, for Ezra.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to kind of see the differences in how they're treating his relationship versus Hiram's relationship, with Hiram going through all the proper steps and channels.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the proper steps and channels, meaning that Kelly received revelation that they were supposed to get married. They got married. We talked about in the end of last episode, him kind of like making his vows to her privately afterwards. Well, privately and with the television show, so the whole world could see. But then then after that, after they were already married, is when they packed up their stuff to move in together, and they moved into his brother's basement and are starting like their little lives together and just starting to like get to know each other really. So this is where they're really, I mean, it was what, 10 days that they got to hang out a couple times, get to know each other, get ready for a wedding. And then now Kelly even mentioned, she's like, I do like him. And love is one of those things that comes with time.
Yeah, and oh wow, they don't know each other. They have never had intimacy at this point. And he even mentions, and this is something that brought back memories from my FLDS experiences. He mentioned on show, do you want kids? And her response was, not right now. He says, maybe tonight. So it's pretty clear, and based on the lingo that I heard in the FLDS, having a baby, he's saying, do you want to have sex? Not right now. Maybe tonight, right? So this is just the way that they haven't even had a chance to even get to know each other that way at all. I mean, it's all new territory here, just diving in and hoping that they can swim together. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, and you don't know this person, so there's like the normal progression, right, as you're dating and getting to know someone. But their very first kiss was until after they were married. They had even mentioned that she had never even kissed another boy ever before. She didn't want to. She wanted to wait until it was her husband. But when you go from, I'm not going to kiss anybody and I'm going to stay so pure, and then all of a sudden you're supposed to be able to be as intimate as you need to have a child, that's a huge leap to do that with somebody that you don't know.
Right. It's not okay. It's not okay. And then all of a sudden someone says a few words and it's okay now.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as, I don't know. I think that going into this, they assume that they're going to feel very differently once those words, and they say you are now married and God is okay with this marriage now.
Yeah.
That they're going to suddenly feel different as a human because they're going to have the God's blessing. But they have gone 18 years of their life not even kissing anyone because they're trying to stay so pure for their husband. It's got to be very awkward.
Well, and that's something you hear even in the mainstream LDS church as well, that, you know, in order to get married in the temple, you have to be sexually pure and there is no sex before marriage. And I would hear a lot of girls talk about how hard that was, or how they would consummate the marriage on the honeymoon night or on their honeymoon, and they would feel like immense guilt and shame, and how it would take a long time for them to be able to feel comfortable or to work through that feeling of impurity, and that it didn't magically just change and for them to feel like it was okay now that they were married, you know? And so there's a lot like emotionally that goes into a lifetime of purity culture into now it's just supposed to be okay. Not only is it supposed to be okay, but it's necessary in order for me to have children, where a lot of these girls, and in Centennial Park, they talked about it a lot, the main purpose, they believe their whole purpose in life is to become a mother. And a lot of times that's why the girls are doing that at 18. As soon as they get out of high school and can legally be married, they're like wanting to be a mother. Rosemarie said that. She's like, I'm ready to be in charge of my own children instead of my siblings, right? So now you go from purity culture, nothing at all. Now it's okay, but not only is it okay and I need to like ease into it, but I really want children, so that means it has to happen.
Now it's required.
And so now there's like the pressure of it as well.
Yeah.
Just can lead to some interesting stuff. like interesting emotions, and I just always feel bad when people are just dumped in the deep end of the
and
pool.
not to mention that for these closed off communities, and I can't speak specifically for the Centennial Park group, but because they came from a similar background, I imagine that it's semi-similar, at least, to the FLDS. But not only can you not have intimacy before marriage of any kind, but you are also not taught about what intimacy even means.
That's true.
You know, so then you get into a marriage and it's all brand new information, and you're hearing it for the first time, and a lot of times from the person that you don't know, that you just got married to, not out of love, but you got married to because you feel that God said that that's the person you're supposed to marry. So that's a lot of information to take in.
Yeah.
I remember one of my, I don't even know if I should talk about this, but here we go. I remember one of my sisters finding out for the first time on accident I don't want to go into all the details, just to sum it up. On accident, she found out what intimacy meant, what that actually was, because she wasn't taught about it. And I
How
remember.
old was she?
Oh man,
Ish.
early teenage years.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember her coming to like all of us that were around her same age, and she was like, "That's disgusting. I am never getting married." You know, like because she's like she knew that then that's what marriage meant, at least in the FLDS, and so she's like, "I am not getting married. That is, oh my gosh!" And I mean, I could tell like it was the most horrifying thing to her, because it was completely nothing that had ever been talked about in the family at all. And like I say, she was, I believe, in her teenage years, and still hadn't heard anything about that. So yes, and then of course she was married at a very young age and had multiple children. So once again, the communities like that oftentimes it go against wishes and go with what they feel God is commanding of them.
Yeah, and it's sad when you hear like that, and to know that those girls, especially when they're, yeah, like you said, when they're married off, and then they're just, the only information that they have is all based on what that partner, who they don't know and they don't love, is telling them what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And so not only is there like not really a level of consent, but then they wouldn't even know what consent was anyways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it's a tricky one. It's hard to, I don't know, for me, because I have so many family members in it. I hesitate to even talk about it, and it gives me, I don't know. I'm sad at times when I think about what loved ones of my own have dealt with, and here's the thing too, is most of them would say, "Oh, it was my choice. It's fine. It's what I wanted, and it's okay." But that's what I was saying too. That's what most people say, that are raised in a specific way, that don't know anything other than that. That is the one thing they know. Of course, they're feeling like they're making the decisions. Not always. Sometimes it's very obviously that they're being forced. But if they're being told, you are raised as a special elite person, a part of the community of God. These are God's wishes. And they say, okay, I want to do what God wishes of me to do. I want to follow him. I want to follow his commandments. Then, but where are they finding out that that's what God wants for them? They're making the decision, the choice to follow God. But
by
there's
that they mean
other
a man.
people, and there are all these different theories about what God wants for you. So, once again, very good people oftentimes fall under the command of a bad person. Not always, but it's unfortunately too many men out there are doing what they're doing for power and money.
Well, and I think especially just being in a marriage that was for love, it breaks my heart a little bit to know that some of these women will never have an intimate experience that's based out of love. Because intimacy at its core should be because of love.
Yep.
And so to know that, like you said, it may be their choice. They may be happy that they made that choice. It may give them children, but to not experience intimacy with a deep love for someone is something that they'll just never know that they missed out on.
Right.
And so that makes me a little bit sad. But
Yeah.
they won't, like you said, you can't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But, instead of just hating everyone that is in these positions of power and harming others and the abuse and all that, instead of focusing all of our time on hating others, I think that just trying to show compassion and love for those that are in these situations is the best thing that we can do. And I know that, we sit here and talk about these things, and it's tough to talk about them, but with the smallest bit of hope that someday someone that needs to hear it will hear it and potentially reach out to us or reach out to someone for help, that this will all be worth it in the end.
Yeah. If you want to hear more of what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, please like and subscribe. Feel free to reach out to us. We have our email address below. We are always here if somebody needs help in having, maybe it's for an opportunity at love.
Yeah.
And just let us know. And we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you all so much for being here with us again. We look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.